think on the surface, superficially, I mean, firstly, there was very much of a difference between the responses of GCC countries. Obviously, you had Al Jazeera television, which is based in Qatar, which was very much championing the whole popular protest movement across the region from the beginning, whereas the other countries were extremely wary of the whole thing and against it, and there was a problem between those countries and Qatar over the way Jazeera was covering the Arab Spring. But it was also clear that Al Jazeera's agenda wasn't just the people go on the streets and demand freedom. There was a very specific political agenda there as well, and they were specific political movements, all of a similar ideology, which the Qatari government was hoping would come to power in all those situations and expected would. And in many cases they were right, because those movements have a history of organizing, they're very well organized, they have a very strong media presence, and they were in a better position to take advantage of sudden freedoms than other movements were. And this caused a problem within those countries. Say in Egypt, you had a big reaction against the Muslim Brotherhood's successes. At the same time, those countries in the Gulf who never liked what was happening, and who didn't like especially the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood and its allies were benefiting from this process, they were able to ally with those forces in Egypt that did not like the Muslim Brotherhood and fight against them. So I think it's unfortunate that in many cases the GCC's involvement turned this process into, are you with the Islamists or are you not? It turned it into that kind of, reduced the whole process to that kind of conflict or struggle, which is not at the end of the day what this is about. There are other reasons why that would happen, because as I say, I think the Islamists of the Brotherhood anyway, if we use that term Islamists to cover the Brotherhood and their allied groups across the region, they're in a very much stronger position than the other political movements, because they have that historical background, they have experience of organizing, they have media access, they have a lot of money as well. And you found that, say in Egypt, Mubarak's regime was always very good at preventing political debate amongst opposition forces coming out in public in a healthy manner. You never had serious discussion of a whole lot of political and social and economic issues within Egypt. So the Islamists were always able to benefit from this because they could organize better than everyone else. They could use mosques. And the suppression of debate at the same time as their organizational ability helped them when it came to this time of there being sudden freedom that no one expected to have. When you couple that with the support they were getting from Qatar and Al Jazeera, you find that this process was really being turned into something else, and that was really problematic. Then, I mean, I think that case in Egypt is a very stark one. So you find it in 2013, when the military stepped in to remove the government. Yes, they will say we did so because the people were on the streets, but the people were partly on the streets. Yes, they had their reasons, but they also had media pushing them to do it. You had, for sure, some sort of discussion that had been going on between some Gulf countries and the military in Egypt, so that they were sure that if they removed Morsi, there would be clear support coming from them afterwards as a government from one part of the world, where they knew they would have a lot of problems with the Western countries, but they knew they would have a lot of support from some other countries. So that's a kind of stark example of how GCC involvement affected the whole process. I think if we look at Syria, it's a different situation, and Libya as well, it's a bit similar, where you have some countries supporting some groups that were armed, supporting other groups that were armed, and helping this turn into a worse war than it had to be. And in the absolute expectation, of course, that the regime, say in Syria, would have no holds barred in the way it responded, which no one should be surprised at. I mean, we can look at the way Hamas has to deal with Israel and Gaza. They realize after a certain point in the fight that the Israelis have no limits. You know, they will flatten an entire neighborhood, and if they'll do it in one neighborhood, what's to stop them doing it in another? So when you know that that's what you're dealing with, you have to have a certain kind of response to that and a plan to deal with that. But what you find in Syria is that everyone's just throwing their money in there and just making this thing worse, knowing that the regime has no limits. So that's one element of why this war has got worse in Syria. So I think over the whole, I think it's been a negative impact. I think the way some Gulf countries have been involved has been negative in many ways. But I mean, that's obviously not everything. They've been involved in, say, fighting ISIS, and they helped bring down Gaddafi, you could say. But in the long run, did that produce a result that was good for Libya? I think it's too early to say historically as a judgment. But I think we can say this: the Gulf involvement was massive across the region. It was unexpected. No one saw it coming. It's had a huge impact, and we don't know where it's going, because, I mean, as I say, this is a process that is not over at all.